All right, then. What have we got today? Today, we are going to do some chess puzzles. I'm going to do a lot of chess puzzles. I'm going to try and do 100 puzzles in the next hour. I'm going to do the simpler puzzles, really. I'm here on lichess.org, which gives you unlimited free puzzles. So that's pretty cool. That's something I actually spent a long time not signing up with Lichess because I knew if I did, I'd probably just do too many chess puzzles. Uh, but now I'm kind of leaning into that. So I'm gonna try and do a lot of puzzles every day. But today is day number one of that. So if you're watching this on YouTube, because I am recording this and gonna upload it to YouTube, if you're on YouTube, then feel free to pause when the initial position shows up and try and solve the puzzle yourself. And then you can unpause and see my explanation, see if I get it right, see if we come up with the same thing. And if that's not what you want to do, you can just feel free to enjoy the show. So without further ado, I want to make sure that all my stream info is correct. Yep, it's updated. Doesn't say I'm streaming 6 hours of Duolingo, which I did yesterday. It was fun, good time. So yeah, let's go. I'm here. What you do is you go to puzzles. I'm going to puzzle themes. I'm going to do healthy mix, which is just like a little bit of everything, and just get going. And I'm actually not going to solve this puzzle. Instead, I'm going to adjust the difficulty level down here at the bottom to easiest. I'm just going to focus on doing the easiest puzzles efficiently, right? So let's go. Okay. What's going on in this position? The white king looks like it is in some trouble. We've got a queen staring down at it. This is blocked off by the bishop. And if I take this pawn, then the only move they'll have is the king, capturing the queen on h2 there. And I can go over with the rook. And the important observation that I actually made but didn't verbalize was that this pawn is blocking this square. So the pawn on f4 protects the g3 square. The bishop over here on d4 blocks the g1 square. So if I get a rook on this open file, this pawn is in the way on g2, then that's not going to be very happy for the white king. So we can go check and mate. And that's how it goes. All right. So a lot of these are probably going to be checkmates because I'm working on the easier puzzles, right? And I think it's probably a good idea in general to try and do easy puzzles, like do easy puzzles, easy puzzles, easy puzzles until you just always get them right, until you always get them right quickly, and then move more towards intermediate puzzles. Okay, so what's the situation here? Again, this white king has found itself in the corner. What else is going on? This queen's staring down this way, but the knight is defending that square, so we can't do anything about that right away. This bishop here is only defended by the knight. So if we were to take the bishop and the knight took, then our queen could come in. But where does that get us? It looks like the king then just goes here, and I actually don't see it right away. This is interesting. I feel like if it's on easiest, this should be a little easier, but that's okay. Okay, so if takes, right? Because if they don't take, they have to move their queen. Let's see. Okay, so let's try to be a little bit more coherent, right, in terms of approach. So what do I mean by that? Okay, first let's look at checks. We have this check, and we have this check. So this one check we've already noticed isn't very good. The knight's defending it. Sure, I can get a bishop, but a bishop for a knight and a pawn, a bishop for a queen, right? I lose my queen, I get a pawn and a bishop. That's not very good. And this check doesn't work because this bishop's here. But what if I remove the bishop, they take with their knight, and now I go here with the queen, forking the king and the knight, right? that doesn't work because this rook is defending that square, right? So that check actually doesn't work as a fork. We have to realize that that knight will have moved. How is this puzzle so confusing? That's fine though. Okay, so if takes, then we can go here, and this, again, I'm not quite seeing how this is like the answer to our problems. I mean, we win a pawn. Is this puzzle just that we win a pawn? Could be. I mean, winning a pawn is good. Shredding open their king side is good. Actually, if I take, they take, I take, king has to go over. If I take here, move over, and do the rook, I don't know. I'm going to go for it. There might be something like super clear that I'm just missing. You know, I mean, if we think about captures, okay, this or this, those don't look like good captures. What can we threaten? I mean, we can threaten the queen by going here. This is not an effective threat. They just grab it. I'm going to go for this, and it likes that. And then the question is what to do next. Obviously, it's not this. It could be this, attacking this square and attacking the knight. Where can the knight go? The knight can just go back somewhere. I think this is better. And then I guess we get this pawn as well. And their king's shredded open. Okay. The thing that made that puzzle a little harder than I thought it was, what's the rating? The rating of that puzzle is 1501, which is not super high. But the thing that I think made it a little trickier is that I was expecting more out of the puzzle, right? Puzzles of this level on like chess.com usually you're going to win a lot more material. So here, I guess I won 2 pawns and I opened up the king. So it's clearly a victory, right? For the black pieces. But it's not like we're not winning a piece that I can see anyway, because this queen here doesn't work because the rook is opened up. Okay, moving on. All right, so again, let's start with checks, captures, threats. Checks, it looks like literally zero way to check the black king. Captures, we can take this rook, they can capture back, but then we take their queen, they take our knight, and then we can go here, which is like a nightmare for them. This just looks hugely winning, right? The key tactic is that their queen is undefended, and if I take their rook is only defended by this pawn, and the pawn is what is protecting their queen from my rook, right? And yes, they'll be able to get a knight in the process, but that's worth less than a rook, so we go ahead and do it. And we take, and it's good. And if they take, sorry, they don't take like that. They take and we take back. They've also lost a pawn, so we've gained 3 points of material, which is usually pretty good. That's not it's not bad. Okay. Let's see. Well, if we look at this in terms of checks, we have nothing. In terms of captures, we can capture the queen. Okay. And how does that play out? They can recapture here, they can recapture here. And what have we gained? It doesn't feel like a whole heck of a lot. It's a good question. I mean, if we could get our queen over here, getting their queen out of the way, that would be checkmate. So is there a way to accomplish that? Well, what we can do is we can take this pawn on c4, right? And then if they take our queen, we've got a fancy little checkmate here on the back rank, right? Because their knight is blocking the d7 square, and their pawn is blocking the f7 square, and our bishop is cutting through, blocking off these squares. So our rook would cover the back rank, and that would be checkmate. Therefore, I'm pretty comfortable just going ahead and playing that move, because also their queen can't take. If their queen takes, then that opens up this, right? Then we've successfully gotten their queen off of the defense of the e7 square. So what can they do? Basically, what they have to do is defend e7 and c8 at the same time. So if they could teleport their queen, it won't even draw the arrow because it's illegal. They could teleport their queen here. Let's make it blue. Yeah. To d8. Cool, that would work. But, you know, they can't. That's not how the rules work. So we do this. And now we just take their queen, right? We just take the queen. Okay, cool. So we got a queen and a pawn for a rook, which, you know, they'll recapture, but that's fine. We're definitely winning there. All right, so 4 puzzles in 10 minutes. So that's not quite the pace. It's fine, though. I think I'd rather emphasize a little bit more explanation, a little bit more coherent thought process than speed, right? Speed is more of a personal training thing. This is something that maybe could be more useful to more people. This looks pretty straightforward to me. If we look at checks, we have this, 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 we have this. Okay, so let's go over those. If we go here, e3, that the queen just captures, sorry, the pawn just captures, and it doesn't look like we've accomplished a lot. If we go to f3, the queen captures, we capture with our knight, so like 1, 2, something like that. That doesn't seem very good. If we just go here, they just take it with the pawn, right? That's terrible. If we go here, the king just takes it. Nothing accomplished. If we take this bishop, however, and also if we go to g4, they just take with like the bishop, the queen, the king. They have a wide range of options for knocking off the queen. So, however, if we take this bishop with check, we are forking the queen and the king. Yeah, they can recapture. Cool. Okay, we don't like win a queen or anything, but we can recapture with our knight. And now we've traded queens and won a bishop. So that looks like it pretty clearly has to be the move, because they have to respond to that move, right? It's so forcing. That's why we always want to look at checks first, because they're the ones that are easiest to calculate. And if they work, they just work. And there's not going to be anything complicated about it. All right, so here, this is a little more complicated looking. But we have to think about this in terms of being like a race, right? The thing that jumps out at me is each side has 3 pawns. White has a passed pawn, but their king's in the way, right? So if we look over here on the queen side, then we can push either of these pawns, and whichever one we push, they're going to have to recapture, right? Or they're going to have to capture. So if I push the A pawn and they capture, then I can go ahead and go C5 and have a passed pawn. However, their king is within this square here, right? So they're going to be able to run me down. So if, say, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then my pawn's gone, and that's no good. So if instead I push the inside pawn, the C pawn, and they take, now I go, and now they can race me, right? We can look at this, and we're both going to make queens. However, I am going to be able to... I'm going to have, you know, it's going to be my move. So I can, like, go, say, here or something. They'll have to move their king somewhere. And then I can just start giving checks. I probably don't want to go there because then they can force a trade. But it looks pretty clear to me. Like, I get a queen, they get a queen. It's hard to see any better way that this can play out, right? So I'm going to move the C pawn, and then I'm going to start pushing the A pawn. And in terms of converting this, it might not be super simple, right? There's definitely some tactics there, but they're not going to make us play it out. It's not going to be like a 20-move tactic or anything. That would be quite mean. I mean, that wouldn't be what I would call a beginner tactic, like having that many moves. Okay, so looking at this just pretty clearly, like we've got a check, but then the king just takes. And do we have anything really crushing? I mean, we could give another check, but then the king just goes back. Either of these squares look reasonable, and we don't have an attack. So if instead we attack this knight by pushing the pawn, well, what can they do about it? Okay, if they do nothing, we just take with the queen, right? They can't move the knight because the queen's pinning it to the king. So they can, you know, try... What can they do? I mean, they can go here to defend, but then then we can just take, right? We can trade on that square. So that just looks very clearly like it has to be the correct move. Okay, so I think an important point is that when I take this, they can actually take this knight and win this knight, but then I get to take the rook, right? So I'm not going to be losing this trade. If I wasn't attacking the rook, if the rook was like over here or something, then they would be able to get this knight back. So it would be more of a trade, and theoretically, maybe I actually want to take with the queen. I'm not totally sure, but I'm pretty sure I want to take with the pawn. Because I think they could do some annoying stuff if I took with the queen. On lead chess, sometimes the puzzles have multiple accepted solutions, in my experience. So sometimes there's two moves that are both good. Whereas on chess.com, a given puzzle, there will only be one move that's accepted, that's good. One move is going to be way better than all the others. Whereas sometimes you'll have tactical sequences where you can, there's like 3 ways to give checkmate on the last move, right? And 3 ways to do mate in 3 or something like that. And there's no reason that can't still be a tactic. You've just got to think a little differently to see those, because then you don't want to be continually trying to decide between multiple moves, all of which are good. Okay. Where are we? We are in check, right? So we can take, and we think, oh no, this is exposed. Well, yeah, but it's protected by the bishop. So taking looks okay-ish. Do they have any follow-up checks? I mean, besides just trading off the rooks? If they trade off the rooks, is there any way to exploit that? Not that I see. Not that jumps out. I mean, we could do something like this, and then they push, and then what do we do? Right? So it's pretty clearly just take the bishop. And then the key is that bishop on g7 was defending the rook on h8, right? So that was very important. Okay. Let's see. We have a queen on b5, which is under attack. We can counterattack their queen. That's one thing we can do. Doesn't feel like we gain all that much from that. We could actually take their queen straight away. This is actually something I'm gonna take from Daniel Naroditsky video, which is that, and I mean, it's not to say he's the only one who's ever come up with this idea or put it forth, but it's the one where it kind of clicked for me. When both queens are hanging, right? Their queen is hanging. We could take their queen with our rook. They can take our queen with their knight. When both queens are hanging, look for like a desperado attack, right? So their queen is just totally free. So I could just go ahead and take it, but then they're going to take my queen. But what if first I sacrifice my queen for this rook? They're going to have to recapture with the king, sorry, and then I can take their queen, right? So we're trading queens, but instead of just giving them mine for free, I got a rook. So let's take the rook first, a desperado sacrifice, and then we just immediately recapture their queen, right? Because it was hanging. So they were both hanging, but mine was able to accomplish something and sort of go down in a blaze of glory. Okay, so this looks like it's going to be checkmate. We want to look at the checks first, right? We have 3 checks. We can go rook here, in which case the king escapes. We can go rook here, in which case the king can't go anywhere, right? They can capture, and then we can recapture and make a queen, and then that's it, and they lose. We could also push this, and then they capture, and then we've accomplished nothing. So it's pretty clear that we're going to give check, and then we're going to capture here. And just for the troll of it, I'm going to show that you can use multiple moves at the end. So instead of promoting to a queen, which would have been totally legit, would have totally solved the puzzle, I could promote to a rook because my knight was already defending this square. The knight's defending the rook, and the rook's cutting off this and this. So that's just a demonstration of how, sometimes you can under-promote. This wasn't better to under-promote. It was just equal, right? But how there's 2 solutions, right? We can promote to a queen. We can promote to a rook. Both of them are equally valid. They both end in checkmate immediately. Okay. White to move. Let's see. What's going on here? Okay. the black king is in some trouble. This square is cut off, this square, this square, this square. And we can bring our queen here, and that would deliver check, and all the other squares are covered, right? So, what can they do if we go here? Well, they can bring their queen in the way, or they can bring their knight in the way. So if we go 1, and they bring their queen, then we probably just go here with our rook, and now we've pinned their queen to their king. We're going to win the queen, right, at the cost of a rook, which is generally pretty good. At least if the material on the board is already, you know, is good enough that we're not going to just like lose immediately. So what have we got? If we give this check, then they're going to have to interpose with a knight, right? Because they can't move the king, and we've already shown that the queen going here doesn't work. The queen here is even worse. We just take it immediately. So queen b6, knight d6, and we can put additional pressure on that with the rook, but that'll be defended twice. It doesn't seem fantastic. However, how about this? Queen, knight, rook. And now we're giving check this way. And how are they going to block that? They can't block it with the knight. They can't block it with the bishop because we just take, because this pawn on f4 is a hero, right? So I'm pretty confident we're going to give check. And they blocked with the queen, so we're just going to do it the easy way. But if they went with the knight, then we had to see that we had this rook e1, right? So, cool. All right, that one was fun. Let's move on. All right, so we have the queens here staring at each other. Right away I see like that my king is has nowhere to go, right? So we can't let them, you know, get too much of an attack going. So we're probably going to have to do something pretty quickly. But we look at the undefended pieces. These pieces are undefended, right? And our bishop is eyeing this rook. So they're attacking our queen. Well, we can't just leave our queen there. We can look at checks, right? That's a reasonable approach. Okay. That's no good, right? They just take it with the king, and I mean, what, we go here and then they move, and we've just lost our queen. We're not getting their queen back. That's no good. Same thing with queen to the back rank. They just take it. And I see no other, well, there's this check too, sorry. And then they just take it. So it's pretty clear that we don't gain anything by giving any kind of check. But we still have tempo moves. We can aim for the queen. So if we go here and trade the queens, now we have time to take the rook, right? Because they had to recapture our queen. They had to take back our queen when we took their queen. I mean, they could save the rook instead, but that doesn't seem like the best way to go. Okay, I've got some like motorbikes, like dirt bikes outdoors. Kind of loud. All right, what have we here? Black to move. All right, so this one's interesting. The queen can go and give a check on h7, which the first thought is like, oh, what happened? What? Oh, did I step backwards? Yeah, okay. I thought I misclicked and put a move in. All right. So if we bring the queen here to h7, they can just take our knight. And if they don't do that, if they go, this is their only other move, right? f1, then we just capture on f2, and that's checkmate. Checkmate's good. We win with checkmate. But if they do capture our knight, well, we can just go here anyway, and we can see that this square and this square are blocked by their pawn and our pawn. Maybe let's do a red arrow. Yeah. And then this is defended by our queen will be defended by our rook, right? So we're going to go give a check with the queen on h2, and then we're going to go ahead and give checkmate on f2. Okay, so far so good. And you know, these are the beginner puzzles, I think is how they're titled. Let me scroll down. Easiest, right? So the easiest puzzles. So I do think, like, do a lot of the easiest puzzles. Do them over and over and over. And Lichess has a nice feature where you can redo the puzzles you've gotten wrong in the past. And there's probably a way to do the puzzles you've gotten right, but I'm not sure. I've never played with that. I think doing the same puzzles over and over, not like the same one, but like a large group, and then you cycle through them, it can be a very, very effective method. And if you're on something like chess.com or whatever, you can sort for puzzles like, I don't know, 300 to 600 or 500 to 1,000 or something like that. Just get really good at puzzles in that range and then expand, right? Because then it's like at some point you'll just never miss any of these very basic tactics. I mean, unless you're playing like bullet chess, and then you can miss mate in one. But over time, eventually, like, you won't. Okay, so right here, we can see that this knight is a problem. We can, go back to our method of, okay, checks. What checks do we have? None, right? No checks allowed. And captures, what can we capture? Well, we can capture their knight. All right, that's going to be worth considering. And that is apparently the only thing we can capture. So, if we capture their knight, they capture our queen, we capture their queen, they have to recapture. They don't have to recapture, actually, but they can. Then we're going to take their bishop, right? So it would be 1 and 2 and 3. And if that were the sequence, then we win a knight, a queen, and a bishop for a knight and a queen. So we're up a clean bishop. However, there's a little wrinkle here, which is if we capture and so first of all, if they were to just retake our knight, well, we can take their bishop, and then they can take our knight, and it looks like we're pretty even on material. But I think we can just drop our king back, and they're, like, in really bad shape. I think they're getting checkmated. So they probably don't want to do that. So they're probably going to have to take our queen to avoid, getting checkmated. And if they do, we take their queen. Now, I guess they can retreat the bishop, right? And if they retreat the bishop, what do we do? Can we get our knight out? Yes, we can go over here. And in that case, we have gotten a knight and a queen for just a queen, right? And a pawn. So we've won material. So I'm pretty confident this is going to be it. They take, we take, and that's it. So, I'm thinking it through a little bit more deeply than the puzzle necessarily requires, right? But I think that's important, right? I think you want to play out as many lines as you can in your head. And that's the way that you're going to improve your ability to actually play in games, right? If you just are like, oh, well, this looks like it's probably it. It's like, okay, if you're trying to train for bullet chess, I guess. But, over time, your intuition will get very well developed. But you still, you can calculate through these lines. You just have to just do it, just work on it, right? And over time it gets easier, it gets less difficult, right? I mean, it becomes, your ability to visualize, to see how the position will look after a certain sequence of moves will improve. And it might take a long time, it might take years, right? But you just do a little bit every day or a few times a week or something, have some kind of regular pattern, and I think you can make a lot of progress. All right. So we have we are being given check, and we can take this, and that's one way of getting out of check. But then they take with the king. We could also move the king like here, 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 here. The most logical seems to be to capture, right? We can't give them check because we're in check, and we have no way of getting out of check and delivering check at the same time in this problem. So we basically want to compare these two moves. King takes on c4 or knight takes on b5. All right, so we want to consider the resulting position in each case. If we go with the knight move first, then the king takes, and they're protecting this pawn. We're going to have to move somewhere. We can't move any of our pawns, so we're going to have to kind of move away from the pawn here, here, here. We don't want to go alongside it, or their king will come alongside it, and they're going to end up queening this pawn. So that just strikes me immediately as like, that just has to be bad, right? That can't possibly be the best way to go. If, however, we go here, sure, they can give another check, but then we can come over here, or if they give a check, we still come over here, right? What we want to do is we want to get our king over here and gobble up these pawns and then start pushing our pawns up the board. So if I start by taking their pawn, first of all, if they take my knight and I take their knight, then they can't block my king from getting in, right? And I'm going to win this pawn, and then that's game. So this just clearly looks like it has to be the best solution for me. So again, I'm just going to keep going in, and that's it, right? I've won the race to the king side to gobble up these pawns on the, you know, the F, G, and H files. Eat the pawns. Okay, let's see. All right, we'll just send that again. All right, so what do we have? Both kings look a little suspect. We have a undefended bishop here, undefended bishop here, undefended queen here. All this stuff's piled up. This knight, this pawn is defending this knight. I guess the circles are better. And it's only defended once, so that could potentially get a little tricky. However, what do we have here? I think we've got some stuff. So let's start by looking at checks, right? And while I say we always want to do checks first, we can kind of, when we're considering moves, right? When we're coming up with candidate moves, we want to do checks first. But we can spend a moment to evaluate the position first, so that we kind of have an idea, sort of like what we're looking for, and when we do, so that when we see it, right, we have an idea. Like, let's evaluate this position a little bit more. A lot of these easiest puzzles aren't going to quite require like a full evaluation of the position, but you know, making these observations, learning to make them very quickly, I think can be very helpful. If we look, we've got, you know, we can count the pawns, right? We're down a pawn, which I think the way to see that we're down a pawn is like, you can count 6 against 5, but you can also see like every one of these pawns has a counterpart, right? There's 3 here and 2 here, like 3 on the king side, 2 on the queen side, and then there's this bonus pawn here, this extra G pawn, right? So we got 1 extra pawn, but they've got 2 bishops, and we only have 1 knight. So we're down a piece for a pawn. We have, you know, all the heavy artillery is on the board. You know, there's a queen and 2 rooks. So we're definitely going to have to like win something here, right? We can't just like be picking up a pawn and be like, oh yeah, that's a tactic. Yay, we won. We're gonna need to like find a checkmate or like win a rook or something. I think even winning a piece isn't gonna cut it. You know, we can just take this piece, but what happens if we just take this piece? Well, they can undermine this defense, something like this, and then they go here. It's kind of messy, right? That's not really where we want to look first. Now we want to look at checks, right? And we see that there's 2 checks. We can give checks with a knight, right? Either on A3, no, that's A6, sorry, or D7. And this D7 check is the one that kind of jumps out at me first, because I look at that and I say, okay, if they want to capture, they have to capture with this rook. And if they do, then I can give a check with my rook. They can run away, and I don't really see a mate right away or anything, but I can take their bishop. And then what have we got? We've lost a knight and we've gained a bishop and a rook. So we've basically won a rook. So that looks pretty good, right? What if they don't capture this and they just move the king? Okay, well, we take the queen, right? So that has to be good. So it's looking like there's, you know, I don't see anything that's going to be much better than this, right? In that this square forks the queen and the king for the knight, right? The knight on that square would fork those, and it would distract this rook on D8 from the defense of this other rook. And since we have this queen rook battery, we can go ahead and grab that rook. So I'm going to go ahead and make that move and take that rook and then take the bishop. And the key here is that that bishop was hanging also, right? It might have been good anyway, but it's like extra good, right? We won the exchange. We gave up a knight and we won their rook. But the fact that we get an extra bishop out of it, now we just won a whole rook, right? Instead of a rook for a knight. So, seems pretty good. All right. Let's see, what else? This position looks so similar. It's so weird. Is this like from the same game or something? Wow, they really have a tendency. Like, I feel like we've been getting a lot of puzzles that look similar to other puzzles that we've gotten. Okay, so um, if we look at checks, we've got one check. Let's back up. Let's evaluate the position. It's clearly not the same game, right? Because they don't have the bishop pair. They have a bishop and a knight. We have a knight. All the heavy pieces are on the board, right? A queen and two rooks. And the pawns look equal, right? There's 4 pawns per side, but black has this nice pass pawn that could eventually become a factor. Right away, it's not much of one. There's also just like no pawns in front of the kings. So we get like king, queen, knight, queen, king with no pawns on this file. So that's a really weird looking line of pieces. And then we've also got all this, right? So like all the pieces are bunched up on these 2 files. This knight is defended once, and it's attacked thrice. Once, twice, thrice. So we could probably just take it. You know, I mean, we can look at this knight and say, oh, well, it's attacked twice, right? But if we take this, then it's defended twice, and maybe not. Okay, so if we take the knight, if they take our knight, sure, we can take their rook, but they can take back, and then, you know, we can't, let's see, takes, and if we take here, then they go here, and that's, well, that's fine, because we're pinning their queen to their king, right? And they're not really going to be able to, All right, let's play that one out a little bit mentally. Should probably dispense with the check first. If check, because that's our only check, then they take. And I mean, we can take, and then take back. Doesn't really gain anything to my eye. So, yeah. What else do we have? We have, oh, we could also take this with the queen. Let's see. No, I don't think that's right. Yeah, the fact that this rook is defended twice actually feels fairly relevant here. So if we take with the rook and they take our knight, this is the main concern I have, because I think I see it. No, I don't. If we take and they take us and then we take, right? Then we've taken 2 of their pieces and we've given up 1 rook, and we've pinned their queen to their king. So they could take, oh, we've taken the 1 rook, so that's why it's going to work. Okay, it's going to work. This seems actually more complicated than I expected it would be. But here's how it goes. I think this is going to be more of like a 1500 type tactic. I mean, when it says easiest, I would expect it's like 400, 500, 600 rating, right? Like sub 1000 at least. But if we take the knight, and they take our knight, we take their bishop, pinning their queen to their king. If they take our rook and we take their rook, I mean, they can give a check, but then we can just hide, and they don't have any follow-up check. They can't move this queen because it's pinned, and so basically they have to desperado, you know, they have to take our rook with their queen, and then we recapture, and the remaining material on the board is 1 queen for us, 1 rook for them. So I'm going to say this is the move, and that's it. It's just like, yeah, that's cool. Okay. It didn't want us to calculate all that much. That's hilarious. I could dig deeper into the what's it called? The calculations and the analysis, right? Like go through the analysis with the computer. But yeah, let's do it actually. Let's put the, can we put the moves on the board? What if this? Then rook takes g4, right? Rook takes f8. Yeah, king takes f8. Okay, rook f1 check. Yeah, king g2 or king e7. Either one's fine, right? Then rook has to go and give a check. Even if rook goes here, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So if rook gives a check, then we just hide with the king. Eventually, they have to go ahead. We see the top moves are, I mean, they can defend with the rook, or they can take the rook, and then we take. And this is basically how this puzzle ends up. We have a queen, they have a rook, and we're going to win. We also have this passed pawn, which is just, like, going to make it super winning. Okay. Turn off the engine. Moving on. Oh, all right, an end game. So, this is interesting. All right, we're going to have to make a queen, right? We're not going to win with just this king and a knight and trading off a bunch of pawns. So we don't want to senselessly trade off pawns. Now, we can make a passed pawn by pushing f5. If they take, we take. If they don't take, we just push. And they're not going to be able to stop that, right? They move the king, we take, and their king's here, and we're here, and even if they move here, this is the square, right? This is you have to get the king in the square. That's a whole nother lesson, but they can't do that from here. So if we go here, they take, we take, and now they start trying to move the king. Again, they can't get the king in the square, right? King's outside the square. So, given that, I feel like this has to be the move. Now, we can try and calculate, okay, but what if now they start pushing this way? You know, we're basically going to beat them in a race because, I mean, we can stop it with a knight. The more pressing concern is, like, what if this? And maybe we sack the knight, or maybe we just move the king over, and then if takes, takes, right? So, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that's going to be the move. Oh, I wonder what the rating was of the last puzzle, and then we keep going. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, puzzle rating 1535. So I guess it's like easiest for my level, which I've got like a 2159 rating that you can kind of barely see there if I scroll it down a bit. My rating isn't really the point of this exercise, but yeah, so it's not really giving me the puzzles that are as simple as I want, because I really do want to build up from super simple to, you know, less simple to then intermediate to then actual legit legit difficult things. So whatever. Okay, what we got? Let's do a few more. I'm not gonna get 100. I don't think I could do 100 in an hour of. I mean, not right now, right? I mean, someday I think I could do 100 of like these puzzles in an hour. Okay, focus. What do we have? We have the black pieces. That's always a good. That's a good first observation. We have a hair in our mouth. That's an unpleasant second observation. And we have a very threatening queen f6, to which I do not see a very good reply. I mean, they can mate us in two, right? Our king, sorry, is very vulnerable. Their king is very vulnerable. So this is just like a race. This is just like whose attack is fastest. If they go here, they're threatening this, and that would be checkmate eventually. If I make a slow move, like queen f3, which is not forcing, I mean, we can look at the checks, right? What are the checks? Queen f8, there's queen f1, sorry. And then they just take, and we have nothing. So that's no good. So it can't be that. So we can go here, and this is threats, right? I mean, we can look at captures too. Oh, we capture the rook. Okay, they capture the queen. Now what, right? That's no good. What other captures? We capture the knight, and then we lose our king. And we don't because it's an illegal move, and they won't let us make it. But point being, that's not the answer. And, you know, what else do we have? We have nothing. So we have to look at threats. So this is a threat, right? We're threatening queen g2 checkmate. So how would they defend that? Well, they would put a rook where the king is, which isn't really a thing. They can't really move the king this way or that way, right? I mean, they can move the king here, but it's still getting checkmated. So that's not going to help. And if they could get their queen on this line, that would be good, right? Because then they'd be threatening checkmate and, you know, dulling our threat. But they can't just like teleport their queen here. And if they go queen d4 or queen d5 or queen c6, I get to just take it with my queen. It's undefended. So then the only last thing to consider is what if they do something like desperate, like this, or like this. They do have these checks, right? So we have to consider that. First one let's deal with is what if knight here? Well, oh, what if we go here? Okay, then they take our pawn, reveal a check on our king, and win our queen. So that's not it. So if they go here, and our queen's already over on f3, then we have to bring our king over to the corner. And the trouble is like, oh, now they can give a check with now they can give a check with the queen, right? But we have to remember, oh, our queen's here. Our queen's protecting those. So they can't. That's not going to be any good. Those squares aren't defended. So, you know, bringing the queen down here or here is no good because we've got this rook. Otherwise, it would be checkmate. So, you know, that's a clutch rook on h8. And the last thing to consider is after queen f3, what if they just sack their rook on b6? Well, we take with the pawn, and then they can give a check. And now we have to see that I think our safest move is to just bring our king to the corner and use this pawn as an umbrella pawn, right? Or a hostage pawn, if you prefer, where they can't, you know, they can't give a check with this rook through the pawn, right? Their pawn would be like a body we're holding in front of us, keeping them from getting to us. So I'm gonna go with this queen f3. I'm feeling confident about it, and they're just like, okay, how about you have my queen? And they staved off checkmate. I mean, they can push here now, and we're gonna take, and then they can like defend here, and then we go here, and then they're gonna like lose their rook, and you know, we win the game. We win the game. I mean, we got the queen, and we're gonna get some more material before we're done. But they did find a move to avoid checkmate. So, you know, hooray for them. Do I have a hole in this sock already? I already have a hole in this sock. It's like less than 3 months old. How does that happen? I guess I go for a lot of walks outside on a beaten path, or a not so beaten path. All right, onward. I think that was puzzle number 20. So at this rate, we'll get about 25 in the hour, which, you know, hey, that's fine. We'll start with that. Okay, so let's evaluate the position. Queen, rook, rook. Queen, rook, rook. Bishop. We don't have one of those. But pawn, 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 pawn. So 4 pawns against 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns. So here's the extra material. They have a bishop, we have a pawn. Okay, so we're gonna have to do some work here, right? We're gonna have to make some progress. And we have these connected past pawns, which is nice. If we were playing some slow positional thing, just marching those down the board seems like a really good idea. Maybe making a nice pawn chain with this b6. This feels like a nice kind of positional concept. However, they can force a trade of queens, and now their material advantage, they might murder us. So that might not work out super well for us. I'm not sure. If we look at this for like more tactical solutions, we can see, okay, their king is here on f3. It looks kind of cozily ensconced with all these pawns around it, but they've, you know, our pawn is blocking e4, their queen is blocking e3, our queen is blocking e2 and f2, and their pawns are taking up all these squares, which actually isn't necessarily entirely good. What if we give a check with the rook? How many legal moves do they have? It looks like 2. One of them is actually very annoying, but I don't think it works. And the other one's not very annoying, and it definitely doesn't work. So if they take with the pawn and we take with the rook, well, first of all, we're hitting their queen. So that seems like pretty bad news for them. But second of all, I'm pretty sure that's just checkmate. So checkmate's probably better than winning their queen, especially at the cost of 2 rooks. But so they're not going to be able to capture this rook, right? If they take the rook, we take back with the rook. And if you just look at this position, like the way to conceptualize it would be to think, I have a rook on h3, and this pawn, and this rook are just gone. Just like, imagine those not there, and I have a nice strong rook here on h3. Well, the h3 rook is cutting across. The queen is cutting across. There's nothing to interpose. Rooks don't move that way. It's not a queen. And this pawn is doing, yeoman's work or whatever, guarding the e4 escape square, right? And their pawns are just like, oh, sorry, my lord, just getting in the way. So there is another move, though. So we have to consider that. They can just interpose. So what happens then? What happens then? Well, the obvious move would be just like take it anyway, right? And then their only move of any legality would be to capture with the king. And then we have this queen over here. And then they run back. And then we hit them with the rook, right? So to picture... Oh, geez, I keep running it back. That's so weird. So if we picture it, we're going to have a rook on h3, and we're going to get our queen on h2, and their king just doesn't have any way to get out, right? They never have a free moment to like move a pawn or anything. So we give check. What was it? We give check. We give check. And we give checkmate. Cool. All right. So that was like a 1574 puzzle. I think if you get to the point where you can solve those regularly, I feel like that's you're at least like kind of intermediate, right, player. I think where if something like that, you can definitely calculate through it. Now, I'm not going to necessarily be able to calculate that in a speed chess game, but I feel like in a classical game, once you get a position like that and you see that the king is so restricted, we're going to be able to have 2-3 minutes to try and calculate that and go, okay, this works because this. Okay, how about this? Oh, no, they can interpose. Wait, what if I just take it and sacrifice? Then I give a check with a queen, then rook mate. Okay, cool. So, yeah, the more you do puzzles like that, the more you get to the point where it just feels kind of natural, right? Kind of more intuitive, and really more just like you can calculate it faster, I guess is what it is. Okay, so this puzzle we can look at, there's this check, and as a check, they just recapture, so we don't gain anything in terms of, we're not like checkmating them or anything. And here, we can take, and they can take, or we can take back, and we've sacrificed a knight for a pawn and ruined their pawn structure. Okay. But more important things to observe are that this knight is hanging. This, like, basically nothing's defended except these 2 rooks, right? They're defending each other, but the knight, the bishop, this bishop actually is defended. But, like, all this stuff is undefended. And this is attacked, and this is attacked. So if we take their free knight, it's not free because they can just take our rook. However, we can be like, here, let's trade the rooks, and now give me that knight, right? So it's noticing we have something hanging, they have something hanging. We can take their hanging thing with check, force them to respond to that, and then their other thing will still be hanging for us to grab, right? So we did a fair trade, and then we just yoinked. This is actually more complicated than it looks, because there's a counter tactic that I didn't even notice or think about that doesn't work. But you can look at this. We're gonna look at this for a moment more and say, oh, but what if they fork our knight and our rook? Okay, well, a giant blue arrow flashed saying this is the answer. But you know, you want to look at it and think, okay, why doesn't this work? Like without the engine on, right? Like why doesn't this work? It doesn't work because you do the big blue arrow thing. You're forking the king and the rook. They have to move the king. If they move it here, then we take with check. If they move it, let's see, what if they move the king here? Then we give check this way. Oh, that's terrible. Basically, their position just falls apart. And even if we didn't decide to take anything, we could just come back, and we're still crushing them, right? We're still crushing because we've managed to get the knight out of danger because we could give a check, right? It's so important. That's why we always need to consider, what are the checks? Not what are the checks in the current position, but what will they be after a fork like this? Well, we have a check, and that gets us out of danger with the knight, and then the rook will then have the next turn because the check buys us time. Right? Okay. What do we got? A few more puzzles. Few more. Okay. We can look at this and say, well, this rook is hanging. They're going to be able to push this and give us a check. And, we could take with check. Ooh, this looks better, though, right? So if we look at this, we can look at checks that we can give. And we have 1, where they just capture. We have 2, 3, and 4. All of those, they take. But what if we give check by taking with this pawn? Well, the really nice thing is that their queen is undefended, right? So if we open up this attack, our queens it's like a standoff, right? But the pawn's in the way. But if we just push the pawn, then they take our queen. But if we take their pawn with check, because it's with check, they have to respond to the check. They can't do that with the queen. The queen can't take that. So their queen is going to be lost, and we're going to take it. And we're going to win the game. Probably. Unless we do something very bad later on. Okay, so we are in check, so we're going to have to respond to the check. In situations like this, I think we can just look at, what are all of our legal moves, and then decide what we want to do. We can interpose with the bishop, we can interpose with the queen, or we can move the king. There's no way to capture the queen, right? There's block. We have 2 pieces that can block, and the king has 1 square to go to. Intuitively, I feel like it's got to be blocking with one of the pieces. It doesn't have to be, but if we think about it, okay, if king here, and then they can just give another check. It just, oh, yeah, I mean, they can go knight here, and then I guess they take, and this looks like, it doesn't feel like we gain anything. We could move the queen, and then they can trade off. And what if we gained? Feels like approximately nothing. So this move with the bishop is super appealing because it hits the queen. They can't just trade them off because our bishop's worth less than their queen, right? So they've got to find a way to get the queen out of danger. Okay, well, that seems possible, right? They can go here, or they can't go up here or over here. They don't have any checks they can give that are worthwhile, right? I mean, this is no good. We just take it, or take it. So if our bishop's here, and their queen, say, goes here, do we have a way of trapping the queen is kind of the question. Do we have a way of winning that piece? I feel like I want the answer to be yes, but I don't see it right away. I mean, just blocking with the bishop seems good and seems intuitively like it has to be the best move. I don't see a reason it's not. Unless, if they get their knight in, is that all that bad? I'm not seeing it. We do know that, okay, from here, okay, so they can bring their queen back this way. I mean, they could go here, I guess, and here, right? So I don't really see anything we have. Oh, okay, this is super simple, though. The important thing to note is that their knight is hanging, right? So we move the bishop. They have to evacuate the queen, and then we just win the knight. So we don't really care what they do with their queen, because there's nothing useful they can do with it, right? They can't, they have no threats. So we're going to run the queen off, and now take the knight. And if we had taken with the queen, and they take our queen, Well, if we block with the queen, they take our queen, we take their queen, then they can evacuate the knight. They can get the knight out of danger. But this way we did it with tempo. We did it with a move that they had to respond to. And because of that, we were able to win the knight. All right, I'm going to do one more puzzle. And I believe that will be 25. Is that right? This is 10. No. This is a line of 19? Really? Is this really 19 puzzles in a line? That's weird. There's not really any reason that it should be 25 though, so I can just do 24 and like whatever. Okay. So that means 100 puzzles would take 4 hours. Yikes. Okay, I mean, I guess if I talk through them so much. If I do it just mentally, it might not actually be as accurate, but it would definitely be quicker. Okay. So, looking at this, they've got a big threat. Their threat is to take our bishop with their rook, which would be checkmate if it weren't defended by the queen. It is defended by the queen, but we don't want to give up our queen and bishop for their rook and knight. Right? That's not a good trade. So we need to find a way to have that not happen. Ways of doing that would be something like pushing the pawn and making an escape square for the king. So that would be a very defensive option. We can also try and give checks. And maybe if we could put our queen here, well, the king's here and the rook's here, we'd have a nice fork. We can't do that right away, but maybe someday. We shall see. Also, if we just do this and then this, then we just win the knight. And that's probably going to be good enough. We will have a queen and 3 pieces for 2 rooks and 2 bishops. So I'm going to say that's just winning. And it's just clearly, it's just this fork, right? We're just going to fork the king and the knight. Okay, and we're just going to take the knight. And that's good. And they can't do any like funky stuff here to trap the queen. The knights are like super defending that. This knight is defended. It's important to see that there's nothing else that's like hanging here, right? That all these pieces are fine. And if they try and do something like this so that then they can double the rooks, we can actually interpose with a knight. We've got a lot of good responses to anything they can do. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be making regular tactics videos and streaming them, I think, every day. I really want to have that habit for myself. I want to encourage that habit for anybody else who wants to improve their chess. You don't have to do an hour. You don't have to do 20-something puzzles. You could do 1 puzzle a day. I used to do 3 puzzles a day, and I got better, you know, just by taking the puzzles, making them feel important, just like I really want to do this puzzle right. Right? When you're doing 1 puzzle, just do that 1 puzzle right. Give it everything you have. And if you get it wrong, that's okay. Learn from your mistakes. If you get it right, great. Keep going, right? And gradually do more difficult puzzles. So I think I'll do another session of like puzzles like these. It's kind of like basic-ish. They're not like super simple or anything. There's definitely simpler ones. Maybe I'll do some simpler ones on chess.com or something. Because Lichess seems to not want to give me the really easy puzzles. Unless I do like mate in 1 puzzles. Anyway, that's it. Please like, subscribe, follow. All those things are super helpful and help me spend more time making videos like this one. Thanks for watching. Cheers. I guess that was a peace. That's more of a peace symbol. Cheers.